All right, everybody. Pat Leonard here from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network, joining you for another episode of Talkin Ball Postgame Live with Pat Leonard from MetLife Stadium. 14-11 loss to the New Orleans Saints. Giants lose their 8th straight. I'll be going on NBC tonight with Bruce Beck to break it all down. Also probably talk a little bit about the Jets' loss to the Miami Dolphins. But we're going to talk about right now here on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. If you're listening afterwards on Apple or Spotify, thank you for joining. Please subscribe. Please hit that sub and like button, as Patrick Evans reminds us, as always, at the top. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for sticking with me during such a tough time as a Giants fan. If you're an NFL fan, a football fan, a Giants fan, there's still plenty to talk about when it comes to losses, when it comes to defeats, when it comes to games. But we obviously do not see many days like this. And that is a day that transcends the result, a day that transcends the final score, a day that transcends the football. And that is a day in which we saw a plane flying over and around MetLife Stadium here on December 8th, 2024, with a banner in back with bold black letters, and it read, "Mr. Mara, enough. Please fix this dumpster fire." For those who remember, this is 1978 all over again. John Mara remembers that well. December 10th, 1978, 46 years ago, when a fan flew a rented plane over the field. That was actually a win that day over the St. Louis Cardinals. And the sign then read 15 years of lousy football. We've had enough. Now, today, it wasn't just the plane. There were fans wearing paper bags over their heads in the stands. One read 2-10 sell the team. Another said one giant mistake. Another said Saquon was here, with an empty hole where the guy's face was, obviously indicating one thing of many that the Giants are missing as we look at the team on the field now today. And John Mara remembers well fans protesting, burning tickets in the Giants Stadium parking lot. That banner that went up back then when his father, Wellington, and John's cousin, Tim, were at odds running the team. And they had a famous dueling press conferences, basically, in February 1979 that brought all their bitterness to light and brought it to the forefront and to the public's eye. And I wrote a story in the New York Daily News back in 2019, I believe, where I sat down with John Mara and talked about some of those dark days in relation to the dark days that they were going through now. And this is 5 years ago, obviously, and it's only gotten worse. But John told me then that was no question the low point in the history of the franchise. And you and I know that if we know our Giants history, we know that back then the NFL commissioner, Pete Rozelle, ended up stepping in and appointing George Young, essentially the first true general manager of the Giants, and ends up keying, as the years go by, the gradual and eventual turnaround of the Giants franchise that has now won 4 Super Bowls. The story, by the way, goes that, and I talked to John about this years ago, and obviously you might hear different versions of this story from different people, but John's version, and a version I've heard from other circles, is that Wellington Mara at the time actually preferred George Young and wanted to recommend him as a candidate. And he felt like if he recommended him, and Tim Mara at the time knew that it was Wellington's preferred candidate, that he would say no. So he decided to go a different route, essentially slide that name across the desk to Pete Rozelle and say, you recommend him as a neutral party's suggestion, and then let's try and go with them. So regardless, obviously, this comparison from 1978 to today here in 2024, not a generous one or a favorable one for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, not a favorable one for John Mara, for Steve Tisch, for the Tisch family. But, this is deserved. This was coming. This is coming from the corners of the fan base that includes a lot of people who, frankly, have been here on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast and who are reading my work in the New York Daily News as the NFL columnist and Giants beat writer there. And what we are doing here is, in my opinion, what we've been doing here is calling it like it is, right? is telling you what we see, what we know, why it's unacceptable, and how we feel like it can change. Now, right now, the first thing that needs to change is any inclination that the current regime and the current operation that the Giants are running is anything worth keeping, is not worthy of being torn down, right? The suggestion that the Giants have shown a lot of positives and that there are tons of silver linings to glean here, and that the Giants are close to turning this around, and the comments that you hear and the tone of certain comments about developing young players and this being part of a long-term process, the Giants are so much further behind right now than where they have been and where they were when this regime took over. And that is not by design. That is not part of a process. This is the result of bad decisions in relation to players that they've selected, in relation to how they're coaching, in connection to the fact that they have an offensive coach and they have the worst offense in the league, averaging 14.9 points per game and 10.1, I believe it is, points per game at home. It was an interesting post game. I mean, there's not much that these guys can say at this point. And like I said, we're at a point now where the details of this have stopped mattering. But, humorous answer from Malik Neighbors about the signage before the game that the airplane was flying around. He said, "I ain't paid for the plane." I also asked Malik Neighbors at one point why the Giants keep shooting themselves in the foot with mistakes. He said, "I don't know how you want me to answer that. That's just football. That's just the New York Giants this year." One of the more damning comments made all day, that I saw on the national level was by Terry Bradshaw, the Hall of Famer, on Fox's halftime show. On the halftime show, Michael Strahan was talking about how disappointing third down conversions on offense and the fact that they only had something like 86 or 87 yards. And he said, well, there's only somewhere to go but up, nowhere to go but up with that kind of performance, trying to make a joke out of it. And Bradshaw said the Giants, they're just a bad football team. They've just got to reload, unload it, and start over. So, the Giants have been issued an edict here by their fans to clean house and start over. On Monday morning, I believe that's exactly what the Maras and the Tishes should do. We will see if that's what actually happens here. The Giants might end up just playing out the string, dragging this all the way out to the end, and making firings at the end of the season. Retaining any part of this operation or blaming or scapegoating or pointing fingers at any specific part of this operation while retaining other elements of it would be absolutely ludicrous, in my opinion. It would ignore the current dynamic. But obviously, when you own a team and when you run a team, basically you have the right to make any decisions you want. The Giants have, of course, shown that they are willing to make their own decisions regardless of what people like me or others suggest is most favorable for their fan base, for their team, and for their franchise. But one thing I would always emphasize is that, and I've emphasized this here before, but it bears repeating because this is critical. John Mara takes his cue from the fan base. He, like Wellington Mara, his father, who he revered and who he, emulated and emulates to this day, Wellington believed very strongly that the fans will tell you when enough is enough. And John Mara believes that wholeheartedly, believes that with every fiber of his being as well. And so from all of the empty seats and the gray seats that you see that don't have butts in them, to the fact that most people are assuming and cheering for, even in some cases, that the Giants are tanking. But just because the product is that bad, they're not actually tanking. The product is just that bad. Because John Mara would never tank. That's what he's always said. He's adamant he would never tank. So that would be quite the thing if he admitted at this point that they were okay with getting, a high draft pick and sacrificing their play and their poor results for it. You saw here Michael Gabriel's special team unit victimized by the exact same play they used early in the season against the Seattle Seahawks, costing the Giants a chance to tie the game late. It's always somebody, it's always something with the Giants. That's what Neighbors was alluding to in that answer. You know, you could nitpick details, drop passes, bad decisions, penalties. You know, the penalties really are astounding and jarring. The Giants are just in a position where they don't have the ability as an operation to get out of their own way. That includes personnel and ability and talent on the field, and it includes how they're coached and how they're prepared. And so it really is a full-scale meltdown. Remember, if you want to support our podcast and you want your comment or question answered first, you can pay for a super chat or super sticker, have it elevated to the top of the queue, and I will either answer your question or address your comment first or next after whatever I'm talking about at that point. I'll also try to come up with a good Giants trivia question so we could do our Estate 98 Giants trivia, and I can dish out a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee, one of our sponsors, and take all of your questions, as many as I can. At a certain point, I'll have to get out of here to get home so that I can go back into the city, into New York City, go in studio and join my good friend Bruce Beck to talk about all of this. But we're going to do as much as we can here, answer your questions, and tell you what we know from being in the locker room and from talking to sources. First, want to tell you about our sponsors real quick. This is an important one. MyBookie, the sports book I work with, really grateful for their sponsorship and support. So I have a special deal with them that's been running for a couple months now, that if you are a first-time depositor, you get a 100% match on that first deposit up to $1,000. So that means if you deposit $500, you get an extra $500 for free. If you deposit $1,000, you get an extra $1,000 for free. That deal, though, expires after today, Sunday, and becomes a 50% match on Monday. So if you want to get that deal, if you've been on the fence, you're not sure, go to MyBookie. There's a link in all of my social media profiles. Go to that link. I'll actually pop it in the chat here while we are talking, just in case, so to make it easier access. But what you do is you want to use the promo code PATSPICKS at this link, and you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. Want to make sure I'm putting the right link in here. I believe that's it. So looks like I might have come back down to earth a little bit today with some of the Pats picks. I came into today 8-1 in my last 9, and I went 15-1 against the spread last week. So naturally, I'm sure Vegas is going to find a way to throw cold water on me. I did get Thursday nights, though, Packers covering there. Looking around the league with all these overtime games and close games, it's really tough. But I've been making people money on MyBookie, and so would really appreciate it if you guys supported the podcast. If you're interested in putting some shekels down on NFL football or anything else, because they really have a ton of offerings there, go to MyBookie, make that first-time deposit, use that promo code PATSPICKS, PATSPICKS. Is the promo code. All right. 100% match expires tonight. So that's MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with them. I see there's a super chat in the queue. I will get to that right after these next 2 ad reads. Also brought to you here by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. It's a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I pour mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use that Talkin Ball 25 code or access it through the QR code on your screen. They're right here, Talkin Ball 25, the QR code. And you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. You don't have to stay subscribed. Just use that option to get the discount. And then if you don't want to stay subscribed, you can just cancel it out. No harm, no foul, no penalty. Boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference today. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. All right, Peter Randazzo says, Pat, you keep saying John Mara, but in my opinion, Steve Tisch is the key if there's going to be change. No way he's taking this well. Peter, I agree with that. And Steve Tisch normally is the person who moves the needle across the threshold. In other words, when John Mara knows it's time to make a change, being only 50% of the ownership with the Tisch family being the other 50, typically it does take both voices. And John Mara has said, he's on the record recently saying he's trying to be more patient than he has. He has said that. And even in some of the recent cases when they have made firings, often it has come to John Mara waffling about whether to do it or not quite wanting to, and Steve Tisch saying, no, it's time, and Mara really knowing it's time too, and then coming to that joint conclusion. And so I agree with you. But, in recent years, it does seem outwardly like Steve Tisch has taken a step back as far as the public eye is concerned. Obviously had, a personal tragedy, these guys are not young men, although I'm getting up there in age too, so I can't talk. But so I would say that John Mara has been even more kind of alone on the forefront from a public standpoint. Now, the Tisch family, of course, is still involved. Steve Tisch, Jonathan Tisch, and the Tisch family being 50% ownership, they still have that responsibility. I'm interested to know how the new dynamic is going to impact this decision, because I totally agree with you is that it's interesting that the message is only being directed at John, because the Mara family is 50% and the Tisch family is 50%. So I think it is incumbent upon them to have to step up on both sides and make a decision here. And I do think that implicitly that message from that plane and from those fans, like when fans are wearing bags over their heads saying sell the team, they're telling people, everybody who owns the team, to sell the team, right? So I think that the Tisch family and the Mara family, I would think tonight would be the most serious conversation they've had yet about when they're going to make a decision, whether they're going to make a change now. They could very much, just keep this going and stringing it out to the end of the year, because if in their minds a change was unexpected, then they could be in a position where buying themselves this extra time down the stretch is going to allow them to kind of explore the candidate pool, right? So that is possible, that they use this time to explore the candidate pool and then at the end they pull the plug. I do think what I would say, Peter, is that on the Tisch side and on the Mara side, first of all, I'm with you, holding them accountable, calling for them to be accountable to the results here. I'm with you, both sides, Mara's and Tisch's. But I would also say that if they don't make sweeping change here, and forget me, forget like that I am saying this and that I have been telling you obviously for a while that it could get this bad, that it would get this bad, and that change would be coming and deserve to be coming because of all of their shortcomings running this team. I think it's really important to note now that the news of today and the news of the season and the conversation to have now is really about the fans are finished. The fans are over it. The fans are done with this. That is what I think, Peter, that is going to not just, let's say, get the Tisch family more involved publicly than they have been or whatever. It's also more about, this is what John Mara and the Mara family responds to. They hear this. When I write that change needs to happen, even if they know it already deserves to happen or they're already thinking about it that way and they know it's bad, it's easy for some people to say, well, there's the people. Pat has an agenda, or some other writer that writes something critical. They have an agenda, or they don't like the Giants, or whatever it is. But when Giants fans start saying enough is enough, we can't watch it anymore, sell the team, this is a giant mistake, this is a disaster, this is a dumpster fire. I mean, we're literally asking the head coach and players, hey, did you see that plane with the sign that said this is a dumpster fire? Right? Like, how are you supposed to keep it together as an organization and believe in what you're running when that is the question that everybody has to answer after a game? Good question, Peter. Good comment, too. Jim says, what are the chances that the Giants beat the Eagles' second squad in Week 18? Is it definitely going to be the Eagles' second squad in that game? I mean, I don't think – is that cinched up yet? I don't know if that's I don't believe so. So that'll be something to watch, though. If it is the Eagles' second stringers, then the Giants are essentially playing a preseason roster right now and putting a preseason roster on the field. So, I think there's a good chance that the Eagles could still win that game for sure. I mean, the Saints are horrendous. Derek Carr, not a good quarterback. That's not a good team. No offense to Darren Rizzi, local guy who I'm, happy for him getting the win and, putting his best foot forward. And, he seemed obviously very excited. It's a big deal for anybody to come back to where they're from and get a victory in front of their family and things like that. But this is a team that already fired its coach. This is a team that hadn't won on the road this year. This is a team that hadn't won outside. Like, they hadn't won an outdoor game this year. The Saints seemed like they were finding every which way to try to lose and lose this game, let the Giants in this game. But the Giants were not to be denied, shooting themselves in the foot and constantly taking things off the board for themselves. So, Jim, I think for the Giants' sake, they better hope that the Eagles are resting people and are not going full tilt in that last game. And, if Saquon Barkley's going for the rushing record and they are somehow in the running for the number 1 seed and playing everybody in that game, look out. Nick says, Daboll blamed Kafka and made Wink leave. Now that he is calling the plays, who can he blame but himself? Thank you for asking this dumpster fire team the tough questions that others won't. Thank you for saying that, Nick. I think I agree. I think a lot of the nuts and bolts questions that we were hearing from, that we hear right now and that people are talking about, like, it's not about the details anymore. It's not about, there's no silver linings. It's not about the, listen, I am glad for any undrafted free agent or backup who gets a chance to get in an NFL game, to live their dream, all those things. Like a guy like Casey Rogers blocking a field goal. Hey, that's great. So individually for those players, you feel great about it. Trey Hawkins getting an interception when he finally gets a chance to play. Happy to see that, So those things are great. But from a standpoint of breaking down the X's and O's of this game, like, we're way past that. And I think that, the only thing to talk about is the big picture. It's the franchise's standing. It is the ownership level conversations that now need to occur. It's the decision about where do we go from here. And, and Nick, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I will never pretend to be telling you guys something that I know not to be true or airbrushing things for you. That will never happen here. I believe we're building a strong and loyal following here because people can see that and understand that. And also, listen, I don't have a crystal ball. There's plenty of things I predict that get wrong. Some of the picks this week, right? For example, with my bookie, even though I was red hot coming back to earth a little bit. But I think that I'm someone who believes, like, if I don't know the answer to something, I'll tell you I don't know. I do think if there's anything I know, it's bad football and it's Giants football right now. and I've seen enough of these situations. And I've also watched enough football and teams out there to know what it looks like when it's good, right? From other teams, from other organizations, from some fleeting glimpses around here of certain types of operational strategies or processes that I feel like have worked better than others, or the way certain coaches hold guys accountable and others don't. You can see the writing on the wall when a team believes, a team doesn't. I mean, let's not forget, this team already basically exploded on the coach and the operation in the locker room after the Bucs game. Most of their most important players have tapped out, gotten hurt, disappeared. You don't see them. You don't hear from them. Like, they are putting a preseason roster on the field. And the lack of belief from the locker room in this, like today, you saw a lot of guys with a lot of individual pride, but everybody here knows that this has hit the skids. There's a lot of former Giants players who feel the same way that I do, talking to you now about this, that this operation, the front office, the general manager, coach, that, players haven't been treated right. People haven't been treated right on the way out the door. They don't like it. They feel like this team is worse because they've gotten rid of good players and people who were important to their locker room and their fabric and their structure. And there's a reason why they're this bad. It's not part of some thought out process. They made a bunch of mistakes that have them in the hole. And Nick, you're absolutely right. The scapegoating of Kafka, of Wink Martindale, who's it going to be next, right? I mean, how about Dre Patterson? How about Andre Patterson saying on Friday that the defensive line was not getting pushed around and that missed tackles and runs on the edges towards the defensive backs, the corners, the safeties, making them tackle was the reason for their league worst run defense? That is, first of all, that's not true, as the stats bear out. Both missed tackles and gaping holes on the front are reasons why their run defense is bad. I've never heard of a run defense that was bad and had a great defensive line that played great run defense. You're either a really good run defense with a good defensive line, or you're a bad run defense with a defensive line that's not doing its job. But that's the type of finger pointing that we hear, that we see, and it's not acceptable. It's ugly. It doesn't do anything constructive, but it's part of this operation. It's part of the example set by the quote unquote leaders of the staff, going back to the situations that you just referred to. If you missed those quotes, those were in the New York Daily News. I put them up on Friday from Andre Patterson. Biondo Contracting, licensed NJ Roofing Company, with $20 super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Really generous. If you have a question, let me know. Let's see. D-Kid says, Pat, what's up, D-Kid? D-Kid says, Pat, do you think Joe Schoen is the type to ask Mara now where he stands? Meaning, do you think he has an idea of what his fate is and Daboll's? Wouldn't you be asking behind closed doors? I would definitely be wanting to know the answer. That's dangerous because, D-Kid, here's how this works. Like, there's almost like tomorrow's probably the kind of day where you'd rather see less of your owner than more, right? Do you find a way not to run into them in the hallway, right? Do you find a way not to be called to the principal's office in person? It's more likely to be like that than to walk up to John Mara and say, hey, want to have a conversation of whether my job's safe or not? Because it's almost one of those things, D-Kit, like the question answers itself. It's like if you have to ask the question, then it answers itself. I think, just sometimes that happens through intermediaries, right? There may be conversations among people in the front office structure speculating on where does ownership stand, or wondering where they stand, or trying to feel out, someone who maybe who's closer to the owners, trying to feel out through those conversations and see how that person's acting. Are they acting any differently towards me? Was a meeting scheduled tomorrow that I wasn't expecting, or that's irregular, right? Like we got, so far all we have right now as far as signs for tomorrow is we got a media schedule. Brian Daboll is still on the media schedule for next week every day. The initial schedule had, they forgot to put, I guess, that it was on a Zoom on Monday. So they just sent out an updated schedule that says, Daboll available via Zoom, but that's typical for a Monday. That's at 12:40 p.m. on Monday. So basically, that leaves the morning for potential change and something to possibly occur. If it doesn't, then that means business as usual going into a Ravens game. That's going to be an absolute disaster on Sunday. And, I would say football wise, even though obviously the, like I said, the X's and O's aren't significant here. But one thing to share with you, Drew Lock did have x-rays done after the game. He was tested for a while. I mean, like he did his press conference much later than normally would from a starting quarterback because he was getting so many things checked out. He had x-rays done, said everything looks clean for now, but he's going to be getting more tests on Monday morning. So I think it's good possibility that you'll see, whether it's a strain or some sort of, he called it bumps and bruises. I don't think he came out of this game clean because he took some monster hits in this game for sure. But I do believe that at least based on what Drew said, he said for now he seems like he's all right. But, who knows where that's going to stand. That's the health update on Drew Lock, who, like I said, took some monster hits. He was asked, did Brian Daboll say, you're going next week? And he said, nothing yet. So we also saw a very irregular play where Daboll put in Tommy DeVito for one play to run a read option. He handed the ball off, and then Drew Lock came back in. As far as Daboll, D-Kit, again, I think it's just one of those situations you probably – if anything, you maybe try to run a game of not to run into people in irregular fashion. But, you guys know this. I feel like all the signs have been there already for this to be torn down. And it surprises me, honestly, that it hasn't happened yet. So, for me, it's hard for me to imagine that this fan reaction doesn't tip the scales. But like I said, do they decide, well, we've made our decision and we're going to make the decision at the end of the season, but we'll just wait until then so we can get a behind-the-scenes head start on the coaching and GM search. That could be a possibility. Peter says, my follow-up, if Shane and Daboll are retained, how can we allow them to evaluate and select a quarterback when they failed so poorly with the Jones evaluation? They also failed so poorly with the evaluation of Drew Lock versus Tommy DeVito in the sense that they put Tommy DeVito on the field after benching, shutting down, and releasing Daniel Jones because they truly believed he gave them a better chance to win. Then DeVito goes out and they get embarrassed 30-7. Then they only play Lock on Thanksgiving because DeVito's hurt. But then this week with DeVito healthy enough to play, they decide Lock gives themselves a better chance to win. So now, obviously, both guys have lost these last three games, DeVito 1 and Lock 0-2, but you can't even make a consistent decision between 3 weeks of who the better quarterback is between your backups after having one guy as your number two clearly all year because he, to you, was clearly the backup and the number two quarterback. So even it's fly by the seat of your pants decision-making. So I hope that answers your question. I agree with you. In other words, what you're essentially saying is, how can we trust them not to screw that up? Like what's the evidence? What's the evidence in favor of them being the ones to make that selection? And I think that's a really fair question. I think that's an incredibly fair question. Peter also says, Pat, if retained, they will be lame ducks, a new GM coming in next year. If they're fired, might not like the quarterback they drafted, then what? Yeah, I'm with you, Peter. I think because one thing I think the icing on the cake for me is I don't see the promise in the young talent they've brought in that some people do. In other words, some people say, well, at least they have a good rookie class, like that's at least evidence that they are headed in the right direction. I'm still waiting to see on the rookie class. Like, I think Neighbors is a very good talent, right? Still very young, maturing as far as all around. Very talented player. They didn't draft Bo Nix, who's in the Rookie of the Year conversation at quarterback at number 6. The second-round pick, Tyler Nubin. Love him as a kid. Love him as a guy, as a person. He's been trying. He's made a play here and there lately, but I think he's had a tough rookie season, to be honest. I mean, a lot's been asked of him, but he's had a tough rookie year at that safety spot. Not quitting on him, but I'm just saying, I don't think you can say, well, he started and he's played, so he's fine. Drew Phillips has been banged up a bunch, had some ups and downs. Theo Johnson, the tight end, I think, a guy who, let's wait and see what it becomes. You have Tyrone Tracy Jr. I like the pick. He does have to hold on to the football, but obviously at value, that's a good pick. But he's got to hold on to the football. And then Darius Muasau, I think, is a late-round linebacker. So, I'm not going to sit here and say, the foundation has been laid. I don't see it that way. I see this as a team that is in disarray because they misjudged and misevaluated themselves, and now they're backed into a corner of trying to sell a narrative of what this has been all along when everybody knows it's not. I just keep going back, Peter, to Joe Schoen saying at the bye week that basically admitting that he misjudged his team, that they, essentially were a little too high on themselves coming off of that playoff year and the playoff victory at Minnesota, despite getting waxed by the Eagles, despite the fact that I think they were 3-6-1 in their last 10 games of that season. Just really short-sighted that they were unable to see through that period. Like the fact that they would have thought they were ahead of schedule based on that and kind of drank the juice, so to speak, I think speaks to their inexperience, first-time GM, first-time coach. I think it speaks to the fact that they really did hire guys who were learning on the job in a lot of ways as a GM and as a coach. And so I think that this is all a reason why I'm not letting them continue to paste together a random group of players as they have here for then somebody else to come in and have to, start behind the 8 ball, like as far as, well, we don't get to draft our own quarterback. We don't get to use that number 1 pick that they had the year before. So now we're stuck with the previous regime's players or the previous guy's players. That's why I think you tear it off, you rip off the Band-Aid. Peter, thank you for all the support. Steve says this team may have little depth, but they are clearly poorly coached. Snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. No, and that's perfectly said, Steve. I mean, that's perfectly said. And see, that's why it is disingenuous to sit here and say that Joe Schoen's done a great job and Brian Daboll has done a poor job. Therefore, they need to retain Joe Schoen and fire Brian Daboll. That is not a fair thing because of how involved Schoen is in the whole operation and because he picks all the players and the players aren't good enough, right? It would also be disingenuous to say that only Joe Schoen is to blame and that Brian Daboll is a good coach being undercut by that personnel. That would also be disingenuous to say because, as you just pointed out, today, these were 2 bad teams on the field, and Brian Daboll couldn't find a way to win the game. The Saints were begging for the team they were playing today, whoever it was, to win this game. They stink. Derek Carr is hard to watch. I mean, really hard to watch. Sounds like he got hurt, may have fractured his hand. I saw a report. I hope he's okay. But even on that play, that was a really good call. He's running the ball to, trying to keep the play in bounds. Tries to get the first down, but is also trying to keep the clock running. and he leaps over a guy and his own guy in a block and crashes down on the MetLife Stadium turf and sustains a bad injury, possibly a season-ending injury. What's the decision making here? Like, I just don't understand. But this is the team the Giants lost to, right? The crazy thing, Steve, is to your point about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The Giants are even in a position here where, because Jake Haener was the quarterback in for the Saints at that point, at the end with Carr out, the Saints were not going to move the ball another inch because their quarterback, they could not function as an offense. They were just non-functional. And if the Giants had kicked that field goal and tied the game and sent it to overtime, they probably would have won the game because, that's at least how it felt based on the Saints and what they looked like offensively at that point without Derek Carr in the game, as bad as he was. And they still, situationally, as a coaching staff, Dable, Gabriel, all these guys, they just found a way to lose it. Thank you for all those super chats. Anybody else has any more? I will go right to them. Manzo says there is no way Shane and Dable survived this. They removed all the talent from this team, which were all Gettleman guys, and never replaced them. Good point. Timothy says, Pat, is there anyone currently within the organization with the vision and intelligence to lead this team out of the wasteland? If not, is John Mara self-aware enough to know he needs to bring in help? That's a great question, Timothy. I agree that similar to 1978 and 79, all the signs are here, including and all the way up to the plane flying all over the sky right now with that message, fix this dumpster fire, compared to 1978. Like, the analogy is there. It's right there for you. And what's right there in front of your face is in 1978-79, the NFL stepped in, Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, stepped in, right? And so now the question is, how do the Giants go about, if they are making change and they are ripping the Band-Aid off, so to speak, are they in a position where John Mara will ask for help? And how will that look, right? I mean, not quite sure I see Roger Goodell naming the general manager of the Giants, for example. But as far as outside consultants, some kind of, PR move to include somebody else of repute, of strong reputation, and go that way, I don't think that's out of the question. Anyone currently in the organization? I mean, I've said this before, like Chris Rossetti and Tim McDonald are guys that I think you saw in Hard Knocks had some of the right ideas compared to where this season has gone, that were, they were the light in the room. They were trying to shine a light, it seemed, on certain sides of the arguments and debates and discussions that seemed informed, enlightened, and intelligent, and on the right side of history, clearly, that weren't always being heeded there. I do think those guys have some good ideas from what I've seen. But as far as franchise changing, management level, McDonald clearly is, he has a lot of influence in this organization. And so that would be the person I think would be more likely to take more ownership of what's happening, whether it's change, whether it's outward change with the regime, whether it's structure to the building, whether it's maybe he's more involved in certain things like that. I guess that would be the best hope, although he has been involved already. D-Pad says, do you think the Eagles will sit everyone to hurt the Giants' tank? I think they will. They love screwing us. Hopefully the Raiders beat the Jaguars. For Show says, why am I a fan of this? It's getting kind of insane. Manzo says, the fact that Shane did not take a quarterback this year should be the nail in the coffin. He could have traded back and still taken one. It's criminal what he's done. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not like to fire them. You can't say they didn't get a chance to draft their franchise quarterback. That's a great point, Manzo. They just had their chance to draft their franchise quarterback, and they passed on a quarterback, right? Great point. Peter Randazzo sounds like he has a future in the tabloids. Maybe you want to join me at the Daily News one day with the It's in Plain Sight. Plain, Plane. Nice work, Peter. Takes me back to when I started at the Daily News and I was cutting my teeth as an online sports editor. And, in order to earn respect on the desk from all of the seasoned vets and the guys who had, the editors, sports editors, people working the slot, the rim, everybody putting out the newspaper every day. And it was such a large newspaper and sports section back then. I started in 2010. And those guys really included me. And part of the reason, or part of the way they do it, is once you start to prove that you can edit stories on the back end, that you can produce, some clean copy on the website after they get it and after you look at it, maybe you make a suggested edit here and there that they understand will make the story better, or that they missed and you catch it, so it makes them look good. And then they slowly understand, this guy knows what he's looking at, knows what he's talking about, right? That kind of thing. So once I eventually got to the point where I could shout out back page headline ideas every now and then if they were looking for them, and then they started to use those every now and then, that was so great. Like that professional feeling, that feeling when they started using my back page ideas and they used one every now and then. And I remember when Mariano Rivera got hurt shagging fly balls, Exit Sandman was my headline on the Daily News back page. I still need to get that one framed. I have some framed. I don't have that one framed. I do need to get that one framed though. But those are honestly some of my proudest moments. That was like me becoming one of them, even though I wasn't one of them. You know what I mean? Like they had done it for longer and I was still learning. But those were cool moments. And that's what you remind me of with the It's in Plain Sight. That's like the shouting out of the back page headlines. And here's the cool thing. The best idea wins, everyone in the room knows what the best idea is, right? It's like if you're sitting around on a couch with your friends, and people are making jokes about what's happening with a game or calling out what's happening on the screen or analyzing. Everybody knows when somebody says the thing that's dead on, and everyone just kind of nods their heads. Even if you don't want to agree that you were wrong and someone else was right, everyone knows, D-Kid says, upon reflection, the Giants hired an overmatched GM who brought in an unqualified coach. Both were in over their heads and couldn't handle the job. Yeah, that's well said. Reminder, we're sponsored here by MyBookie, by Boom Chaga, Mushroom Super Drink, and by Estate 98 Coffee. Like I said, if you guys haven't taken advantage already, today is the last day to take advantage of the 100% match first deposit deal with my Pat's Picks promo code. I put the link in the chat. Go to that link, use the promo code Pat's Picks, and make your first deposit of $50 or more all the way up to $1,000. You get a 100% match on that first deposit, plus a $10 chip to use in the casino on MyBookie. So if you deposit $1,000, you get an extra $1,000. Deposit $500, you get an extra $500. Deposit $100, you get an extra $100, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Great deal. The deal drops to a 50% match on Monday. So if you want to take advantage of that, do it now. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. And like I said, have been surging. 15-1 coming last week, 8-1 of my Pat's Picks coming into today. And even though some of my picks haven't hit today, Kendre Miller, I dropped that giant sprinkle online this morning, Sunday morning, and Kendre Miller scored a touchdown today for the New Orleans Saints coming off of injured reserve. I gave that one out. I hope you guys bet it. I hope you made some money on it. He also had 32 rushing yards, so I believe that was over his rushing total as well, although he didn't go as far over it as I thought he might. But we're also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, the natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. Chaga has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with beta-glucans and antioxidants. Use the Talkin Ball 25 promo code or access it through this QR code, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Boomchaga.com. Start feeling the difference today. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. It's delicious. It takes 10 seconds to make. It's a specialty coffee concentrate for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. Also great as a mixer for espresso martinis. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. And I've said this, and I'm not making this up. This is true. There are plenty of the people who have won the Estate 98 free bottle here with our Giants trivia, Estate 98 trivia question after these Giants games, have gone and ordered more because they love the product so much. All right, let's get back to the queue. Let's see. Patrick says this organization is failing and it starts with Mara. Getting rid of Tom Coughlin is when it all started. There is no doubt. Iconic says this is bad, Pat. Has Steve Tisch walked in the building like Stone Cold Steve Austin yet? Steve was in the building today. I did see him on the sideline before the game. But unfortunately, so far, it seems no additional influence has been exerted. I can't also, frankly, at this point, it's hard to say, it's fair to call on both families for what they actually think right now, because their inaction would seem to indicate that the Tisch family is okay with this. Killer Cam says, Pat, how much did that airplane ad cost you? Just curious what the going rate is for that. We know it was you. Yeah, I actually got a pilot's license on Wednesday. Went out for a test flight out of Teterboro Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just to get my bearings. The craziest part was flying it around the stadium today, but then having to land it out on Route 17 and then run to the stadium in time to be here for opening kickoff to cover for the Daily News. That was the craziest part. Manzo says, I believe Shane is worse at his job than Daboll. He removed all the talent from this team, leaving Daboll nothing to work with. I think they're both to blame, as we talked about earlier. I'm a fan does not trust Shane and Daboll to draft a quarterback. D-Kid says, as someone who lived through the first Banner incident, yes, I'm glad you're referencing this, because that's one thing I definitely think is important to hear. It's important to hear right now from the Giants fans who saw that then and can really compare with their eyes and ears what they saw on the field, what they saw in the parking lots, what they heard in the media, what they heard from other fans. So D-Kid says that one ushered in a tremendous change in 1978-79, starting with George Young and Ray Perkins, and signified the previous low point in Giants history. Yes, that's well said. And even John Mara has admitted that that was the low point in franchise history. Novice says, I'm shocked at how low the bar is for some fans. Some want Daboll to stay because the locker room hasn't quit. What about his inability to hire and keep a staff, build a game plan? Right. Also, the locker room hasn't quit. How many names and players do you recognize on the field? Like all the guys they went and found more bodies to put in the lineup. And a lot of them are younger guys who are trying hard on an individual basis to make a good name for themselves and are excited they're playing in a game and like those kind of things. The players that were supposed to buy in and lead the team, most of them are not on the field anymore or are not here, like in Daniel Jones's case. I mean, you've had guys tap out, you've had guys, leave with injury. A lot of them have kind of disappeared from plain view. Like I don't know where Dexter Lawrence and Bobby Okereke are at the moment. I did ask Brian Daboll where they are. He said they were in the building last week, but I didn't see them. Candyman says, Pat, how did we stop the run with second and third string D linemen? Looked to me like they were selling out for it, sending more people into the box to help. And then Saints were running the same predictable runs, it seemed. Also, they were just kind of daring Derek Carr to make certain throws that he was unwilling to make so they were taking guys out of coverage and putting them in the box. And then, crashing harder. I mean, there was definitely more emphasis on it. clearly doesn't reflect well on some of the guys who had been in there that they stopped the run better in this game than they had in the past. But, seemed like the line of scrimmage was better today than it has been. So maybe Andre Patterson went in and asked all his players to back him up with the misinformation he delivered on Friday. Steven says, hey, Pat, as a season ticket holder, here are the benefits of a losing season. Okay. So as a season ticket holder, here are the benefits of a losing seasons. Number one, no line for the bus from the back parking lot. 2, you can sit on the first tier close to the game because of empty seats. And 3, no crowd leaving or lines for the bus. Steven, I said the same thing this morning. There were tickets going for like single digits in certain points on StubHub. And also it was a breeze getting to the stadium. So save money, go to a Giants game. Also, no traffic for Giants NFL Sundays. So totally agree with you. Let's see. Wow, listen to this stat. The Giants they've had 6 games this year. They did not score a touchdown in the first 3 quarters of a game, and 8 games this season where they didn't score a touchdown in the first half. Wow. Daniel says, Pat, another game with so many penalties. Why can't the coaches do anything about it? It's a great question. Clearly, they're unable to fix their problems, which is what coaching is supposed to be. G-Man says, 3 years in and we're the worst team in football. Shane is an absolutely pathetic GM. He has to go. So does Dable. New GM, head coach, and QB at the same time. I agree. Start over, start fresh. But like I said, Shane admitting to everything he did wrong and being repentant, contrite, and seeming nervous during the bye week told me that he knows where this is headed or likely headed. Bandit says this is a bad year to need a quarterback. D-Kid says this is a fine year to need a quarterback. If you have the first or second pick, make no mistake about it. William says coach of the year is getting smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. Oh, yeah. I don't even see it in mine. KTS says about to be 0-8 at home and 0-6 in the division. The Giants have never been 0-6 in the division in their 100-year history. Clean house is inevitable. Dave Z says, cheers, Pat. At least you get paid to watch and write about this miserable disgrace of a franchise. You're right, Dave. That is the silver lining is I'm not paying for this. I'm getting paid for it. Dave Z says, I just lose a little of my soul each and every week. It really is depressing. One guy I know was saying that, basically that he was putting up Christmas lights. A friend of mine who's a Giants fan, he said he was putting up Christmas lights at his in-laws. And hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Putting up the lights at my in-laws and no one is home. I'm almost done, but I might stay until the Giants game is over. In other words, I might stay so that I don't have to watch any of that when I get home. Joey B says, all right, Pat, I'm on the road. I'm about an hour and 15 minutes from home. Tell me what's up, man. Who's getting fired? What was the vibe in the locker room? What was the deal with Tommy in and out? That was a read option play. I guess Dable's version of trying to be creative. That was very strange. I think that that did not add up in the moment. Why they were doing that. Their handling of the quarterbacks has been ridiculous. Dable by no means seems to have any logic regarding his fourth down decisions, like when he goes for it, when he doesn't. Also, listen to this. The Giants had 5 possessions in the first half where they got the ball either across midfield or anywhere between their own 43 and the Saints 48. They had 5 possessions start in that area in the first half. They had 3 points on those 5 possessions and in the first half total. How impossible is that? It's impossible, isn't it? So, Joe, not to not answer your question, I mean, I keep telling you guys I think they're cleaning house. At this point, I don't know why they haven't yet. No one has told me it's coming tomorrow. I do think that this is going to tip the scales with the fans speaking the language that I have been speaking because that's who John Mara listens to. I don't know if Dable is going to get canned tomorrow and then they'll fire Shane at the end of the year. I don't know if they're just going to wait till the end of the year I don't know the answer to that, but I think it would be ludicrous to think that they are running this back. I think it would be just unheard of for them to run this back. Unheard of. All right, let's see. Joe, you also asked about the vibe in the locker room. I mean, it's weird, Joe. Like there's a lot of guys in there who haven't played, and so they're just excited to be in the game. They're, guy like Runyon got hurt. He's banged up. He's got more tests coming tomorrow. I mean, the people who can speak at an organizational level, the people qualified to speak at that level are few and far between. Like Darius Slayton, Drew Lock now because he's the quarterback, though it's basically like he just got here, so that's tough. I mean, Brian Burns, first-year player. There's just not a lot of guys left who can even give you that kind of pulse of the team, finger on the pulse of the locker room. Like the Buccaneers post game is what we saw after the Bucs game was indicative of how the team that was on the field this year felt at its lowest moment, at its most frustrated. And so the vibe you get now is one of just playing out the string, more kind of eye rolling at, we found another way to lose one. Like I thought the best quote and remark and takeaway came from Malik Neighbors when, it was the quote, obviously, I ain't paid for the plane. But also when he said, I asked him about all these mistakes, shooting yourselves in the foot. And he said, I don't know how you want me to answer to that. That's just football. That's just the New York Giants this year. And I believe he had a false start too. So he was one of the people involved in that. All right. Looks like we got some more super chats here in the queue. It's Joey B. Joey B, thank you, man. Joey B says, Pat, at this point, I just go to watch the other teams play, and I cheer for them so we lose and get picks, and I have nothing else to cheer for. Let's go Ravens and Colts. Joe, were you one of the people cheering when the field goal got blocked, or were you already on the road by then? Because there were some cheers when the field goal got blocked. But here's one thing I want to make clear, and I wrote this for the New York Daily News. One thing I want to make clear is they look like they are losing on purpose and tanking for that number one pick, and that's by design. That is not by design. And John Mara, if he's against anything, it is tanking. That is what he is adamantly against. He serves on the competition committee, right? He is the He's the chairman of the NFL Management Council. I mean, his name is synonymous with the league. He can't be tanking, right? It's the New York Giants. He's always in the room with Roger Goodell on policy decisions, conversations. In some circles, he's considered one of the consciences of the league. But this is how bad it is. Like that is how bad it is. All right. Time for your Giants trivia question. This is your Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the day. So what happens is I'm going to ask you a Giants trivia question, and the first person to get it correct in the queue is going to win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. And whoever wins is going to receive a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee mailed directly to you. When you win, I want you to send me either your P.O. box, your address, whatever it is, on Instagram so that I know where to send it. So my handle there is the same as YouTube, PL on NFL. So whoever wins this, you're going to send a bottle of that. You're going to send me your address at PL on NFL on Instagram, and I will send you a free bottle of Estate 98. All right, here we go. The Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the day. Drew Lock's first 8 passes were incomplete today. 0 for his first 8. Obviously, 2 of them were drops. He also had a completion in there called back because of a holding penalty. Okay. So, first 8 passes incomplete. Who was the last NFL quarterback to have his first 8 passes go incomplete? I'll give you one hint. It was in 2017. So again, this is not a Giants quarterback. This is an NFL quarterback. Drew Lock's first 8 passes were incomplete. Who was the last NFL quarterback to have his first 8 passes fall incomplete? Happened in 2017. All right. So Joey B, my point and you speak for a lot of fans in what you just said, for sure. So that's totally valid. But I'm just responding by saying that, John Mara and the Giants, John Mara is not pleased with them competing for the number 1 pick, even though some fans are. I guess that's the best way I would put it. See some guesses coming in: Deshaun Kaiser, Dan Orlovsky, Jared Goff. No, but all good guesses. Let's see. Tom Brady, no. But keep guessing in there. I'll get back in the queue, and we will keep going here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Strong numbers tonight, strong engagement, passionate fan base. You guys are great. All right. Let's see. Where do we go next in the queue? Daniel says Mara should be calling Bill Belichick and begging him to save the franchise. Maybe Belichick can bring his son as his assistant coach and take over when he's ready to retire. D-Kit disagrees, as pass on Belichick. Belichick's flirtation with North Carolina, interview with North Carolina seems genuine. I also, at this point, I think Belichick's more likely to land in a place like Jacksonville than anywhere else. I do think that what we've talked about, but I feel very strongly about this now. I feel like what we've talked about is, Bill Belichick is more likely to end up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And in part, why not New York? Because the Giants would have to tear up a lot of what they do and how they do things, personnel in the building, people who have influence in the building. Belichick's not going to come to a place where people who don't have the titles of GM and coach and et cetera are given say-so in different discussions and elements of roster building, and who have influence on, let's say, on the owners, right? And who have influence on which direction the program is headed and what decisions the owners actually make. So unless the Giants are willing to tear up how they do things, I think that Belichick coming here is not happening. Dan says Mike Vrabel would be my choice, but he's going to be at the top of every team's list that is looking for a head coach. I would imagine, too, that being good friends with Shane Bowen, is Mike Vrabel going to hear from Shane Bowen that he should come to New York and this is a great place? I don't know. British says, when they say Locke gives us a better chance to win, do they mean the number 1 pick? Well, they just, he's more of an NFL quarterback than DeVito. And frankly, that's why I think he was in the game today, is because they had a better chance of scoring. Well, they had 11 points today, but they had a better chance of having a score that didn't look embarrassing with Locke in than DeVito. So you saw that 30-7 against the Bucs, right? But in the last 2 weeks, they get handled by the Dallas Cowboys, but they score a late touchdown, and the final score looks better than what it really was. It was really 27-13. It ends up being 27-20. Today, Locke gets a late touchdown, almost gets a game-time field goal. So instead of it being, 14-3, it ends up being 14-11, which looks better when you look at the score sheet. Now, obviously, anybody worth their salt looks at all those things and says, we know what the real score was. We know what really happened in the game. We know that this is an unacceptable product, and that doesn't matter. But the NFL is all about optics. So, and that is one game that Daboll and Shane do play and play well. Yep. This is worse than those teams, no doubt. I'm a fan, no doubt. Let's see. Yep. You like Vrabel. Okay, another loss. Might be time to fire Daboll, Shane. Pat, what are your odds of the regime change now? 75%? I mean, it would be absolutely astonishing for change not to happen here. It would be astonishing. John Dumpster Fire Mara says A2. NYOG says, let's add another name to the mix. Nick Saban and team him up with Belichick. I remember the last flyover. Thank you to whoever bought the plane for the flyover. Yeah, who did that? Anybody? Is our flyover fan on here? Evan says, fire Daboll and Shane. Giants can possibly go the whole year without having a win at home. That is unexplainable. D-Kid says, Pat, I feel like this is headed towards a final conclusion and a real house cleaning. Unfortunately, the Maras have been unable to bring in competent front office people for quite a while now. I'm a fan says, shut down Neighbors, don't let him play hurt and jeopardize him getting a serious injury. Avex says, on the bright side, McFadden has improved a great deal and played a great game today. Trey Hawkins looked awesome too. Nice to see, despite the dumpster fire that is this current organization. D-Kid says, I think behind the doors meetings will be taking place with parties outside the organization participating to try and fix this thing. Has to happen, and I believe it will. Evan says, the Giants have never finished with a season with 2 wins or less. That might be the case this year. I've said this could be the worst team in Giants history, and it's still on that track. Juan says, Shane is an amateur GM. None of these pieces fit. They came in a package deal and should leave as is. Agree. If we won today, Candyman says, we would have dropped to the 8th pick. We have to keep losing. Shouldn't be an issue. How many teams will be turning over their head coaches, says NYOG. Well, let's look at the standings here to give you a clean answer there. So you have so the Bears will do a search. They might just keep Thomas Brown, but they'll do a search. New Orleans will have to do a search. Who knows if they stick with Darren Rizzi, but they have to do a search. So let's see. You have Vegas could be a spot. New England after 1 year could be a spot. Don't know about that, but could be. Let's see. The Jets, obviously. Jacksonville is expected to as well. So those are some. And then usually you get, a surprise here or there. Like usually you get 1 or 2 that come out of nowhere. I mean, is Mike McCarthy going to stay? Is he going to go? A lot of noise out of there that people want him to stick around. You have the one team that I kind of raised my eyebrow at today was the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I'm not saying Raheem Morris is going to be one and done. I don't know that. But, I mean, these losses to the Chargers, now the Vikings, the way the defense is playing, it's scary bad there. And Arthur Blank, that owner, you never know what he's going to do. Steven says, Bradshaw is still bitter. He had to hand Coughlin the Super Bowl trophy in 2007. Greg says it's time. Move on. Start tomorrow morning with relieving both Shane and Daboll of their duties. Tim says, Pat, should the Giants take Shedeur Sanders from Colorado if the Raiders select Ward first overall? If they judge he's the guy and he's worth that, for sure. If they don't think he is, do a trade back, get some assets, and pick the guy that you think is. I mean, they definitely have to take a quarterback but you don't want to force a player at a value you don't believe he's worth either. But clearly, the Giants are in a position now where they desperately need a quarterback. They need to draft a quarterback. They needed to draft one this year. And whoever they adjudge to be that guy is somebody they have to take. Craig says they'll get fired after the Ravens hang 40 next week. I agree with you. If it doesn't happen now, wait till that game. Baseball says, Pat, does Dable think Cutlets is Taysom Hill? What was up with that one play he brought him in for? Yeah, that was – I think it's funny. Everyone has the same reaction. Everyone was just wondering, like, what was that, right? Like, it didn't fool anyone. It didn't lead to anything special. Nobody understood it. That was very strange. Jeff says, what GM coach would want to come to the Giants if they know they have less than 3 years to turn it around and a playoff win in the first year doesn't matter? Well, 3 years is a long time in the NFL, Jeff. It didn't used to be, but it is now. I think 2 years is a crazy short time. I don't think 3 years is. I think 3 years is enough of a sample size in the NFL to adjudge whether your leaders are assembling a good amount of talent and have a way to manage games at the very base level. Not to mention, somebody mentioned earlier the idea that they can't keep a staff together, that, guys leaving on their own left and right, don't want to be here, getting chased out, getting scapegoated, getting blamed. Not a healthy atmosphere. So, I understand your point, Jeff. That's a fair point and a perspective to bring. Absolutely. And I think John Mara, what he was saying in October was partially what you're saying now, which is the idea that, he has been, in his mind, he's been fed up, but he's been almost like rushing to judgment and feels like, okay, that's not working. So let me try a different route and let me go to a different strategy. And maybe that strategy is showing more patience. But I would argue that you don't show patience with something when you know that it's not going to work. You don't convince yourself that it's going to get better if you don't believe it will. If you see a lot of signs of progress, then you believe there's progress. I don't know what signs of progress they would refer to if they said that there was. I genuinely don't. I'm not being fresh or anything. Dan says, I'm a season ticket holder and I'm completely done. I was going to go today just to get my Frank Gifford bobblehead, but decided to not even waste my time. I hear you, Dan. I hear you. Thank you for that perspective. Intel says, bring on Bill. Simeon says, thank you. Why do people insist on the continuity argument for why Shane shouldn't be fired if he sucks so much at being a GM? You took the words right out of my mouth. Juan says, my favorite is fans saying to stay away from Cam Ward to draft Manning in 26. How do we know we are going to get a pick high enough to get him? How do we know he wants to come to this mess? Great point. You can't govern a team and run a team that way. I don't believe Mara can be trusted to hire the right GM after going 0 for 4 now, says AstroDoc. What about cleaning house and hiring a director of football operations to do it like a Belichick or Pete Carroll? Yeah, fair point. NYC says the GM and coach are not going anywhere no matter how much you wish for it to happen, Pat. The owner said they're not going anywhere. Now you hope Tisch has a different opinion on coach and GM. No, John said he wasn't going to fire them during the season. He said he didn't anticipate making a change after the season. So that said, I'm not going to make a change now. And after the season kind of left the door open to that. Josh Allen, by the way, just became the first player ever with 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. He has 6 touchdowns against the Rams. And they're still losing. But no, NYC, I've been here since 2016, and I've seen a lot of John Mara votes of confidence expire in a similar fashion when you said, wait, you just said that. How can you do this now, right? And it's because things get worse, right? That's why. So yeah, I guess to round that out, to give you a fair answer there, and that's a fair perspective from you for sure about like what you heard from Mara and why you think there's not going to be change. Absolutely. I think the way I see it is John at that point, if he said, yeah, I probably am going to fire these guys at the end of the year, I don't have confidence in them, then you're undercutting the team that's still on the field, arguably. So what he does there is he says the only thing he feels like he can say, which is try to put some confidence behind them, try to hold the line, so to speak, and hopefully they turn it around. But obviously that wasn't the result after he said that. When John Mara made the comment that you're referring to, first of all, like I said, he left the door open to a change at the end of the year. But when he made that comment, we were right around them being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were like 2-5 or 2-6, I think, at the time. So now they're 2-11, right? 2-11, 8 straight losses. In their last 3 games, they've scored 7, 20, and 11 points, respectively. So things change. Simeon says there is no sense in firing Daboll now. The damage is done. So I'm assuming you just want it till the end of the year. Peter says continuity is a camouflage. It's winning that creates continuity, no doubt. Gio says it continues to astound me that Shane made no attempt to trade Barkley. So stupid. Sports says, don't you think Shane will be able to sell Dave Gettleman getting 4 years and the 2024 draft class and not getting to draft a quarterback to Mara? Mara is easily convinced, and we know he wants continuity. Well, he did have a chance to draft a quarterback, and he didn't. That could very well be part of the argument from him. But Mara could easily say, well, you're talking about a guy who, even though he didn't do a good job and we let him go, I mean, technically he was fired. They didn't call it that. But, the best players on your team are still guys that he drafted. Juan says the Giants need a coach like the Saints coach who can discipline his players. A says, I'm not sold either Locke or DeVito are better than the other. It's a mess. Sports says, then take another quarterback. The lame duck situation is overblown by conservative GMs not wanting to give up on a quarterback they inherit after year 1 or 2. Big Dog says, how can the guy that let Barkley walk to a division rival not lose his job? Yeah, so well said. Very well said, Big Dog. That's the thing. That's what I was saying about questions or comments about the, X's and O's or the details of today's game. You do a great job there of kind of bringing it out to the big picture. It's like, well, wait a second. Can we just talk about like the elephant in the room here? And Big Dog brings up a great point. It's like, can we just step back and say, like, how can Joe Shane, who let Barkley walk to the Eagles, now he's an MVP candidate, how could he not lose his job? Along with the Giants losing 8 straight, being 2-11. Totally. Sports says Shane can't control what team he goes to. The decision to let him hit the market, I agree with. Unfortunate it ended up being the Eagles. Well, Sports, in fairness, we did see in Hard Knocks, though, that Shane thought the Eagles were out of play, and it turned out that they were the leading contender and ended up signing him. And that was the one thing that Mara wanted him to avoid and guard against. Right? So Simeon says, Neighbors was a no-brainer as far as talent, but was he needed more than Penix or top offensive lineman? Exactly. Penix has shown nothing in the NFL, Sports says. How can you advocate for taking him over a wide receiver we know is really good? Well, Sports, in fairness, because the Giants had no good play at quarterback and they needed a quarterback this year, They needed a quarterback. Jay says, right after the banner flew, there was an actual dumpster fire right near us in the parking lot. Oh, that's perfect. Let's see. NYC says, I can't wait to see Pat's face when they bring back the GM and coach. I'll continue covering them. I don't make the decisions. I'm just telling you what I think and what I see and what I know. Simeon says, it's the same reason why they shouldn't have drafted Barkley. Great talent, but not what was needed. Yep. Yeah, it's a really good point, Simeon. Let's see. Biondo says, where are all the NFL experts before free agency? All said that the Giants would be crazy to sign Barkley. Where are all of these experts? I think what I said was I would sign him, but you have to obviously go to a point as far as what you're paying him. I do think that the part that really reared its head during Hard Knocks that you could see as far as how the NFL free agency system works, a huge part of it being a general manager is being able to accurately gauge the market, Biondo. And thank you for your super chat earlier. So huge part of it is knowing who's courting a certain player, what his market is, the positions market, that player's market. And I actually think that Chris Rossetti's comment about and his review of what Barkley was and what he would command, that was valuable information that I think Shane in the end should have acted on. Also, one thing I did say consistently is that Barkley is more important to the Giants than he might have been to certain other teams. In other words, the Giants could not afford to lose a player of that caliber because of what their offense was and because of what their team was and because he was their best offensive player, something that Joe Shane articulated, in that show. Oh, it looks like we had an accurate or a correct winner of that trivia question. So the last NFL quarterback to have his first 8 passes go incomplete was, drumroll please, Cam Newton. That's right. Joey B winning the Estate 98 coffee. That's the Estate 98 trivia question brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, the specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for coffee on the go, quick cup, hot or cold. Joey B, DM me your address or a P.O. box on Instagram, PL on NFL. You know the deal. You know the drill. You know where I'm at. And I will get you a free bottle of Estate 98. Nice work there. Let's see. All right. I'm going to skip to a couple more here because I do have to run soon. Looks like Michael is here paying in to stir it up. Pat, thoughts on Talking Giants? Hard workers, good content. Mike is laughing at neighbors saying, I ain't paid for the plane. Michael says, I paid for the plane. Well worth it too. Michael is he's a guy who likes to stir it up. So thanks for the money, Michael. Let's see. There was a question I saw. Pat, was that neighbors who said you're calling plays like I ain't out there? You know what? I don't think so, KTS. I don't know for sure, but it doesn't sound like him. I think it might have been like a Saints defensive player saying like you're calling this stuff like I'm not here, but I'm wrecking these plays. You're not accounting for me type thing. I think that's what it was. William said, you said John Mara said he would never tank. Just as well as we all know, a team would never say they are tanking because of the penalties they would face. How do you know they're not tanking? Well, because there's nothing worse than that you could be called in John Mara's eyes than someone who's tanking and he wouldn't do it. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, William. I'm looking forward to the next time he talks because I think that really needs to be discussed, is his take on the fact that people believe that's what the Giants are doing here. A2 says, conspiracy theory, Mara hired the plane to make firing Shable easier on him. You're not the first person who has said that to me, A2. You are not the first person who has said that to me. That is funny. All right. This has been a great chat. Remember, we are brought to you by MyBookie. This is the last chance for a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 all the way up to $1,000. So use the promo code PatsPicks on the link in my social media profile. I also put it in this chat, and you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. You got my Pats picks every week. I pick against the spread every week. You see every game picked against the spread in the Daily News. I have my prop bets, the Giant sprinkles, Kendre Miller hit today. Whether you like betting underdogs, overs, unders, props, whatever it is, parlays, Get it at MyBookie. They have a lot of fun games there too, squares, etc. Check it out. Please do that. That's the best way to support our channel, is to support our sponsors here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard, postgame from MetLife Stadium, and on the Believe Network and on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify through the Believe Network, thank you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the audio version of the podcast and to my YouTube channel, PL on NFL, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. And please give a like. Hit those like buttons right now while we are live here on YouTube post-game before we sign off, because those likes, that engagement, as well as your comments and questions and super chats, that tells the fans and the algorithm on YouTube, it pushes it to the Giants and NFL fans that don't know what we're doing yet, tells them to come join us for all these conversations. So thank you very much for that. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. Personally feel a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order or access it through the QR code on your screen, or use the Talkin Ball 25 code. Whether it's Talkin Ball 25 code or the QR code, you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. So that'll cost you only $30 for your first order. Start feeling the difference today, boomchaga.com. Subscribe and save, Talkin Ball 25 and the QR code. You can always cancel the subscription if you want, but I don't think you will. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. Congrats, Joey B, on winning the Estate 98 Giants trivia question. He says, I finally get an Estate 98, no doubt. That is a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. I'm a fan, says, thanks, Pat. Good night. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I haven't been able to get to all the questions in the queue tonight. I apologize for that. But like I said, the reason is that I have to leave MetLife Stadium and go into New York City in order to go on Bruce Beck's show, Sports Final, on NBC tonight, Sunday night in Manhattan at 30 Rock. I always look forward to doing that. Bruce Beck is the best in the business. Can't wait to join him and do a little bit more of Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, the New York Daily News, the Believe Network here on the Pat Leonard YouTube channel. Thank you especially today to Peter Randazzo, who dropped a bunch of super chats. Jim Osborne, Nick Bavas, Biondo Contracting, D Kit. Let's see, who else checked in? Joey B. And then Michael O'Brien was chirping me later, and Mike Ross as well. Thank you to everybody for all those super chats. Really appreciate that. And let's see. Joey B says, Pat, you're the man. We got to get a cigar in before the end of the season. It's coming one way or another, Joey B. Don't worry. We will get it done. I'm looking forward to you trying Estate 98. Let me know what you think. I know a lot of people who have loved it. Thank you so much for being here, guys. See you next time on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. We will do some fun content coming up this week. Looking forward to it. Actually planning on having Matthew Berry, the fantasy football expert, on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. And that's coming this week. So look for an episode with Matthew Berry, hopefully preview and project Giants fantasy options, looking around the NFL. If you have any questions for Matthew Berry, please drop them in my comments on the YouTube page. You can direct message me on Instagram, PL on NFL. Really appreciate that. Looking forward to having him as a guest on the show, and much more coming. There will be a live at some point during the week. I'll let you guys know. Thank you so much. Good night from MetLife Stadium after another disappointing but eventful Giants game. Just as a reminder, the story of the day, the story of the season so far, the plane flying over the stadium today, Mr. Mara, enough. Please fix this dumpster fire. Perhaps the next time I talk to you, the dumpster fire will be partially put out by the fire department that is John Mara, Steve Tisch, and Giants ownership, if they do what the fans are calling for. Daniel says, thanks, Pat. We appreciate you. See you later, guys. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much.